Hi, everybody. This is Anna Maria from Voda Coaching. Welcome to another episode of Impactful Conversations. Today, I have the joy and the privilege to welcome back one of the most exceptional leaders that I had the privilege to meet, Maritza Aulestia, who is originally from Ecuador. And not only does she have 27 years of professional experience as a leader, helping executives unleash their potential to greatness. She is also the founder of My Purpose Empowerment Coaching. And what makes her coaching unique is not only the decades of knowledge, as you can see from her background, that she shrinks into actionable advice that she provides her teams and clients all over the world. She also has a cross-cultural perspective that is highly valuable in today's high-paced world of over communication to the point of hyper communication sometimes. So without further ado, let's welcome Maritza. Maritza, thank you so much for coming today, and it's such a pleasure to have you.
Ana Maria, it's such a great pleasure to be here on your podcast. It's a pleasure to see you because we have stopped to be in contact for, I would say, for about a year. And just to see the amazing mission that you have, the amazing work that you're doing, it's a privilege to be here with you and to continue and reconvene on this journey that we have of helping leaders in the business world and other lives. So it's a pleasure and thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much for accepting the invitation. And for those of you who may not know, Maritza and I, we met approximately a year, 2 years ago at the Mastermind, again, the power of network. And we both immediately found that connection because of our passion for purpose. And even though we are from a different culture, from a different background, different experiences, we had this one thing in common, and we joined Superpowers to teach you training on how to live your purpose. So interestingly enough, a year later, we are meeting again to break down this mystical mystical word purpose, and to show you how to embody purpose. So whether you have a 9 to 5 job and you never want to be an entrepreneur, that's okay. Whether you are an entrepreneur who is still figuring out what is your purpose, or let's say you are in between. You have a job and a professional career. You also have your outside your job, passions and hobbies. Whatever you are on the spectrum, Maritza is a person who truly has mastered the key to integration, the integration between professional success and personal fulfillment. And this in itself is the reason why this podcast is going to be impactful. So drop whatever you're doing, open your ears, open your heart, and let's dive in.
Excellent.
Maritza, tell us, have you always had a purpose? Were you a little girl who always knew that you were meant for something? Or was this something that came to you later in life, and it was some sort of a big awakening? How did you arrive to that clarity of what your purpose is?
Uh, it I was not aware of what was my purpose like most of people. I can share with you, like, growing up, I was really meeting the expectations that either my family or my organization or school had. So I was like most people are, is just meeting expectations and living the different cycles in life based on what was expected from me. I I start getting curious about purpose after I moved here to the US, and things changed a lot. And then I really accepted coming to the US, and what I put for myself was like, I want this life transition to mean for me so I can really get to know myself. And on that journey, I came about the book from Simon Sinek that says start with why. And that actually helped me to start thinking in a more structured way of what does purpose mean. And in that journey, I discovered something. Everybody has a purpose, but it's running here on the background unconsciously. So finding a way to bring it out into consciously and to be able to see it in one sentence, that is the work that all of us should make. Why is that? Because when you know your purpose and you actually can express it, it becomes that compass that really serves as a filter and a direction to choose and to decide, because you know what you're about. So if you don't do the work to actually understand what is that thing that is running and is motivating you to do things, it's going to be doing it. It just makes so much more sense if you actually get to see it and you allow that to be a tool to drive your decision making for your personal and your professional life. So that was my biggest aha moment with purpose.
Oh, this is so interesting. And before we continue, I also want to say thank you to Simon Sinek for giving us the book Start with the Why. I feel like this book has inspired many readers, including myself. I remember reading it. I had just started my coaching business in my mid 20s, and this book validated everything that I was experiencing. And the reason I'm saying this specific word validation, when we start opening ourselves to the receptivity of discovering what our true purpose is, we start to get curious and we start reading books, we start listening to podcasts like this one, we start talking to people, and ultimately we arrive to what Maritza described so well as having that filter. And I would like to dig in and unpack what this word means for you personally, because the way I understand it, when we have a filter, this means that we can see our direction more clearly, and we can say this is for us and this is not for us. And this actually makes our life much smoother, because we are liberated from this constant overthinking or constant overpiling things on our plate just because someone else is doing that. You also talked about living according to the expectations of other people. This can also create a lot of uh, fog in your mind. So let's pause here, because I'm sure that many people who are listening to this podcast are resonating with at least one of these descriptions. So whether you are still carrying the burden of other people's expectations, whether you're just unsure what your purpose is, whether you know in your heart that something is off, but you can't fully label it what it is. Maritza, if you give our amazing audience a couple of action steps, what are the first things your clients do, or your the people that you help with do, to start getting more clarity on their journey?
The first thing that I will say is something that we tend to shy away from, is become aware of your emotions, because our emotions are that thermometer that tells you, are you aligned or not? So when you are happy and you're feeling well, that means that you are aligned with your purpose, with your values, with your mission, even if you probably cannot spell it out. But it's over there running. And because you're aligned with that, you're congruent with that, you know that you are on your path. So understanding that when you feel good means alignment, it's important. Then on the other side, if you feel frustrated, sad, or angry, that is just telling you that something is off. If something is off, what you can do is, please, whatever you believe in, the universe, God, or whatever higher power, is just like, please show me what is off and what needs to change so I can come into alignment and become congruent again. So even without not knowing your purpose, if you are just monitoring how you feel, and instead of being unaware of what's happening, you start asking, what is happening when things are not going as expected and you actually feel bad? And ask, what needs to change so I bring onto alignment? That's one thing. And also, when you are feeling good, you usually see things differently and you're going to have options. So you ask, which option will satisfy me the most, will make me happy the most? Because as you go through that journey, you're going to start seeing some patterns and some things that you like. And when you just all of a sudden get lost into doing something and say like, oh my gosh, so many hours and I didn't even realize, you are in the right path, and just pay attention to what are those moments that happen to you, or like those things that you just like, oh, for that one, I wake up even if it's at 3 a.m., I'm going for that. That is already signaling what are the things that are important for you and are aligned with your purpose and your mission for personally and professionally.
Oh, this is such a great start, and it is very actionable. It is very
It is
actionable.
just paying attention to how we feel and use that to ask those two questions.
Mm-hmm.
What do I need to change so I bring in alignment? And what would satisfy me the most when things are going well? So then I attract more of that is important for me.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I really enjoyed the way you paved the very, very first step. Before we bring alignment and congruence, I heard you say the importance of labeling your emotions and checking in with your emotions. And ultimately, for those of you who are unsure, am I happy? Am I sad? A very good test is, how do you feel 80% of the time versus 20% of the time? Because life is not black and white. Nobody's happy all the time or sad all the time. Most of us have different emotions, different experiences. And the true test, are you happy, is how do you feel inside of yourself, independently of external validation in the form of financial success or any sort of social applause. That's a very good test of how happy we are. And speaking of happiness, and I'm really curious about your take on that, again going back to Simone Sinek, the quote from Start with the Why is still in my head all of these years later because it's so profound. Simone Sinek says that happiness comes from what you do, fulfillment comes from why you do it.
Mm-hmm.
And as you said earlier, that's such a great example. You can be happy with your hobbies. However, your hobbies, unless you are extremely passionate about them, are not going to give you that urgency to wake up at 3 a.m. and do something. Whereas having a strong why is driving that deep internal momentum forward. And I'm really curious, Maritza, for you individually and also for people in the corporate world who are designed to follow deadlines and structure and planning, what are a couple of things you recommend them to fully start differentiating between what makes me happy and content versus what makes me truly fulfilled?
The what and the why are critical,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm going to tell you where we get lost on the how. How is the enemy of progress, and it just makes us stagnate. Because I'm going to use an analogy of every idea or every dream that we have is like a balloon that just keeps blowing and growing. But then when we think about the how, it's just like, oh, I want to go onto the trip, and then say like, oh, but I don't have the money or I don't have the time. So I call that, when we focus on the how, we are balloon poppers or dream poppers. And that is what actually gets us off balance.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a big focus on doing things and achieving things without not necessarily understanding what is it that I want to achieve and why is that important to me. So if there is something that we can just step back, is like, spend your time defining what and why, and really, really, really hold yourself back to think about the how.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you really think the last time where you just thought about it, I want to go on a trip. Why? Because I love the beach and I cannot wait to feel the warm water turquoise with the white sands in my feet, and I'm just gonna go. When you have that certainty, when you can feel why do you want to go there, the how just happens to appear, and you become very resourceful to do that. So if there's one thing that I would say, is spend the time, and if you can write it down, what is it that you want and why is that important? But not why because you're trying to do something. No, why? Because I will feel this way. This is what I am looking for to connect, to feel, to share, whatever that is. So if you do that more and you train yourself to that more, instead of just thinking about the how and just finding all the decisions and all the things, why things are going to go wrong, then you accelerate and stop, accelerate and stop. Well, if you just keep yourself in the what and the why, you're on a steady power of creation, and with the ability to really be truthful to yourself and to be producing, progressing those experiences that will help you to fulfill your mission or your happiness, whatever you're looking for.
Oh, this is so great, and your example right there, I love this imagery of the how being the balloon balloon popper. This is so true. The how always shows up when we have a why, and what is so fascinating to me is how ultimately, whether you are a personal development speaker or coach, or whether you are a spiritual coach, or whether you are a manifestation coach, ultimately we are talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
From a spiritual perspective or a manifestation perspective, the recommendation is start with the feeling. How do you feel? Which is exactly what Maritza told us earlier, right? Now, the reason I'm saying this is because sometimes I see this almost like collusion between the spiritual and the professional personal development, while at the end of the day, we are sharing the same teaching, using different words and different expressions. However, it all comes down to alignment and congruency.
And I'm going to talk in marketing terms because
yes.
that actually brings together.
Mm-hmm.
There is no decision and there is no purchasing decision that is not made because there was an emotion behind. We can say logically this is it, but then when you go to the back of it, oh, I like the color, it just makes me feel happy, or it just gives me, like, every decision has an emotion behind it, even if we're not paying attention to that. So that's how the logical and the spiritual world comes together, and emotions are the driver of our decision process.
Absolutely. And speaking of emotions, now that we are bridging emotions to emotional intelligence, and why are we talking about emotional intelligence in the context of living your purpose? Because ultimately, you need to hone your emotional intelligence to evaluate your environment and make necessary changes that come from critical thinking, emotional regulation, and also, as Maritza suggested and gave us a very good logic behind it, which is again is how logic and emotion coexist. She told you why you need to do it, and then she demonstrated how you feel when you do it. And this is the power of creating unshakable motivation. When you have a very clear vision and you are fully charged by positive emotions to create this vision. And ultimately, as Maritza share with us, purpose is truly your compass and your fuel. And this is why the symbol of your company has something to do with that. If you want to share more about the symbol and how is it linked to compass.
This one is the symbol of my company, because I used to say, I sometimes feel like this leaf that just fell in a water stream, and I just go with whatever life brings me to. But every one of us, maybe around 40, 45, there is that big question that we ask yourself: why am I doing all these things? What is going to be my legacy? What is my purpose? And then the why is going to happen. And why really are like the emotions that you feel with what you're doing. And you want to have that bigger contribution and you want to magnify your impact.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, this leaf needs to go back and start a journey in the inverse, that is an inner trip. Go back to the roots, go back to the tree and understand who you are. Because when we are young, we are on external exploration and we are on a journey of, let me explore the world. And we're going to have a lot of external messaging and expectations that probably we're going to hang from different parts of our body. But at that point, at that turning point, when we just turn into a more mature stage and we want to start building our legacy, that's when we do a U-turn and learning ways to actually explore what we have inside of us, because most of our answers are inside of us. It's just learning to access them. That is the inner wisdom that all of us does. So instead of being this leaf that just goes with the current, it's just hold it in your hands and let's go find what are those beginnings, what are your roots, what are those drivers that are bringing you to do what you do. And the anchor is the purpose that every person has. So that is why I chose this golden leaf, because this is the golden key to ourselves, to our purpose.
And what is fascinating for me as I'm listening to you is, again, the conviction, the certainty, and the passion that you use when you describe the why. And that's not random. Maybe right now you're so associated with your mission that you probably don't even recognize it anymore. However, this is what happens when we have such a strong why. It shows up in our language. And this is for those of you who are working on your public speaking skills, on your magnetism, on your persuasion, on your influence. All of you leaders, you have to have influence. This is how you can create impact. Influence for good, of course. And ultimately, the more passionate you are about whatever you're doing, the more your words carry meaning. And as you were describing your the mission and the symbolism and how we have to find our roots and our anchors, and our anchor is our purpose, and having that inner GPS, our innate wisdom, as you said, trusting that our answers are always inside us, and starting to think about our purpose and our legacy, and what is how we want to be remembered, and all of these things. It all comes down to having a clear why. So before we continue, again, I would like to pause here, because for me it's always very important to bridge the gap. And what happens a lot when you live with purpose, for us this becomes second nature. It's a lifestyle. And this is exactly what you said in the beginning. It becomes this filter. So you can no longer be this leaf that goes with the wind, and you just have no foundation. This having that grounding energy comes with purpose. And I would like us to pause here and ask you again for your personal story. I find personal stories to be very impactful. Was there something that happened to you after you came to America and you started building your career, and you created success, and you created recognition, which is what many corporate high achievers seek at the beginning? And again, this is how we bring back the emotional intelligence. And because, Maritza, you're such a deep person, you have always been very interested in more than what meets the eye. I can tell about this. I mean, look at the books behind you. So was there something that happened, or was it a sequence of events throughout your career that eventually led to your choice of starting a coaching business in addition to being a leader?
I was actually hired by my company. I work for Actionable. I spent my first 12 years with them. I spent it in Ecuador. And I really had a career that just took over, and I was just very focused. And that is what brought me to the US. I came as an expat, and later on I was localized to the US payroll. And what was the breaking point that really made me stop? When I came here to the US, I describe it, I felt like an eagle that could do everything. I was running an HR operation throughout Latin America. There was about 6,000 employees, 10 countries. I had a team of 30 people. We were just doing, I say I had the dream team, and they were so proficient. And I really had to do a lot of, from selecting the people to building the processes and to do all the things that we needed to do for the service station or the gas stations that we had throughout the countries in Latin America. So when I came here to the US, you just come and you just say, okay, I'm all this and I have done all that. And they were just looking at me and said, like, who are you? And whatever you did before, you just have to prove yourself here. So at the beginning was pretty tough. And I was saying, I am working for the same company, but it feels so different. And that saying that says what made you successful before is not going to work today, I really live that very, very, very well. And the other saying that says a small fish in a bigger pond, exactly that. Because I was the person in Latin America, but coming here, being so huge, I came to the mothership. There was a lot of things that needed to change. The work style was different. The code of like getting things done was different. I had an accent. I had a different work style for the one that needed to, like, help me here. And in the process, I really crushed myself. I call it like, like when in the army, you go through the first year of training and they break you down and then you have to build yourself because you just have to enter a new culture. That's what happened to me. And in the process, I realized that my whole life just revolved around working, and my company staff and work was the priority. So I was kind of lost. And when I went back home, people used to say, like, Maritza, you look kind of lost, frustrated, sad. What happened to you? Did you forget who you are? Because it was so hard, the transition that I did. And I think that now I say thank you, because I am so stubborn that if it was not this hard, I would not have stopped. I would just continued on the trajectory and doing whatever I was asked to do without really choosing, is this truly who you are? And is this truly what you want to do for yourself? Was at that point that I went back actually to family constellations, which is learning about patterns of families, and also there is the organizational part. And then I start understanding much more of who am I, why do I do what I do? And that is when I started to understand what was happening to me. Then I just say, okay, I need to continue to, because I was just doing one thing, and that is what corporate people do. We're good at working, maybe going on vacation, and taking care of our families. And that's it. It's kind of like this routine that you just keep repeating, repeating, and repeating. So if you are doing that, you're always getting your soul and your mind fed in one kind of type of activity. I call it in one wavelength. So I started exposing myself to very different ways of thinking. Family constellations, Tony Robbins, yoga, meditation, dancing. And when I exposed myself to that, I start understanding how many different ways of living there was and how plain my life was. So I started enriching it with different perspectives, different types of thought processes, different, ways of doing things. And that is when I discovered that if you think about the life wheel, I was very unbalanced. If you think about the wheel of a bicycle, in order for it to just go around, It needs to be balanced. And I had like a huge thing that says work. And then if I had time to feed the other stuff, it was there. So living those experiences and learning from other people that actually live a more fulfilled life, I was able to reshape and now have that balanced life where you have your friends, your hobbies, your spiritual life, and you have all the radius of the bicycle wheel more balanced. And that made all the difference possible. And then I didn't have the excuse anymore. So because work is like this or work is like that, which is usually we look for a scapegoat to blame why things are not going our way. But truly is because we have not given ourselves the time to think, what is it that is truly important for me and what's the life that I want to create for myself? So thanks to those tough experiences, entering the US way of working, it opened up so many alternatives and so many different things that I could do to really find myself, to really find what Maritza is. And it's a scary place because it's easier to blame others for the things that you don't get to do or because you're unhappy. But if you actually go do the work, then there is no excuse. You made a choice, whatever you're living, either you like it, and if you don't like it, change it. So, but you need to have a different reference so you can have more choices and you can have more variety on how do you want your life to be.
Mm-hmm. Oh, this is such a great story, and I'm absolutely sure that so many people resonate with at least one or perhaps even most of your experience, because many people come to the States from a different culture. I have moved from Bulgaria. I have clients from all over the world. And even if you were born in the States, the truth is that the so-called American work ethic is excessive for many people. We were not designed to work so hard and to spend 40, 50 years of our life grinding and being stuck in the rat race in a wheel that keeps circling to the point of you being completely exhausted and not having any time left to live your passion. So I want to pause here for a moment and again break down your story in a way that actually validates the suggestions you gave in the beginning of this podcast. And as I promised in the beginning, Maritza walks her talk. And how she shared her story only validates the suggestions that she gave us, because it's something that it sounds like you have done in your own journey. You
Yes, so let me tell you what made a difference. Actually, all the books back there, I actually read it. But this is the book. If you want to read it, or I really recommend it, The Code of the Extraordinary Mind from Vishen Lakiani.
Yeah.
I was actually looking for how to make a plan because everybody talks about goals and plans and do this and do that. And I was helping a group of new employees that were just barely starting in the corporate world, and we were training them for a new operation for the company. And I said, like, how do I help them to do their goals? Because I didn't know myself how to do goals. So this book actually talks about end goals versus mean goals. So a mean goal is you do something to get something else. A mean goal, you do it because it's tied to your why.
Mm-hmm.
So an end goal, a mean goal, for example, is I need to go to school to get a good job so I can have a good life and so I can go on trips. A mean goal is I want to have a Porsche, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you want to have a Porsche? Because it looks beautiful. Because every morning when I go to my garage, it's black, it has a sunroof, and it's just gonna make me smile. And when I go inside and I turn the ignition, it's gonna give me goosebumps. And just imagine the road trips that I'm gonna take with my friends, with my family. The music is going to be beautiful because it's going to be a beautiful sound. The experiences we're going to have with that car is just going to be amazing. What is the difference that you notice with the end goal versus the mean goal, Ana Maria?
Even the way you're sharing this story, I think hints to the answer. And based on our entire conversation up until now, ultimately the first goal is the trap that many people go into. They do things that they're supposed to do or they're supposed to want, or they think that, oh, this is kind of the map. I'm supposed to go this way. Wow, the second option that comes from your personal passions and hobbies and interests is, first of all, and this is a great book, I attest. And in this book, he also talks about removing the inner critic. He has a different name for that, but let's keep it censored. And becoming okay, becoming unshakable is what I'm going to say. And in this book, as Maritza said, ultimately vision shows us the power of being attuned to your authenticity, and who do you want to be. And what I loved about the way you described going to the garage and hearing the sounds, hoo hoo, it was hilarious. And of course, I mean, all of your senses are engaged and you can imagine it, and when you imagine it, you can create it. And before we continue following that um, suggestion of being highly attuned to your goals from an emotional place, I would like to go back a little bit, because you mentioned something that I think is very important for people to remember from this podcast. How when you went back to Ecuador, you saw this mirror of yourself in the eyes of the people you can trust. Sometimes this is our friends, family members, coaches, advisors, people who truly want the best for you. They're not going to shy away from telling you the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I heard, you went back and people like, Maritza, what happened to you? You're now frustrated and you seem lost, because they were holding the mirror of your authentic self. The Maritza we see today, who is curious and passionate and full of life. And the reason I wanted to repeat this part of your story is because I'm sure that this resonates a lot with people who get so overwhelmed, so burned out, and they almost start getting fearful of entering this scary place, as you called it. And this is a phrase that I hear a lot from clients as well, this scary place of acknowledgement, right? So this is why I want to pause here and hear your thoughts. What is something you recommend for people to go from self-denial when they pretend they don't have a burnout, or they don't have an adrenal fatigue, or they don't have a midlife crisis or whatever? So what do you recommend people do, especially 40, 45 years old, to go from self-denial to honesty, compassion, and willingness, and you said it so well, willingness to go from blaming to taking action and empowering yourself to know that you're the only person responsible for your choices?
So I'm going to go back to the example of the mean goals and the end goals, because that will answer the question. And it's going to connect with the what, why, and how. When you do a mean goal, is a how. You are actually working on the how, even if it's not aligned to what is important to you. You're just complying steps to get to a destination because you think that that's the path, which not necessarily it is. When I described the example of the Porsche, it was, I want this and why. And it was connected to an emotion. It was connected to sharing. It was connecting to living and enjoying.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you know that you are in denial when you are following steps because you think that that's the only way? You're focused on how, you're focused on activities, but you have not stopped to say, okay, what is it that I want to achieve by doing all these things? At the end, if you remember the example, it was, I want to have a good life and I want to be able to travel. So if my what is I want to travel, I start with the end in mind, and then I back it out. Why do I want to travel? Because I love cultures, because it makes me happy, because I want to give these experiences to my family. So then you start focusing on that, what and why, and that empowers you. And then you don't have that self-defeating thought process, because now you have clarity on that. So like, if I want to do that, okay, how can I go about it? Instead of going to all these steps and you lose yourself on those steps because you're not starting with the end in mind. You're just like a little mouse picking the little, like, pieces of cheese, but you don't even know what type of cheese do you want at the end. So that is how you connect what and why with how. So when you are just so focused on the how, you lose yourself. And then that's when you start having those self-defeating thoughts for yourself. So if you're here, stop, take a blank sheet of paper, a pen, and say, okay, I'm doing all these things. What's the end goal? What's the end of the road? Why am I doing all this? And then define your what and your why and focus there. And really write the what and the why, and spend a lot of time on why do you want to do what you want to do, how you, and what feelings are going to that bring to you. And then, like I say, don't believe me, test it out, and then let us know how it goes.
Definitely let us know in the chat. And again, ultimately, the power of what you shared is so tangible, because every one of you could close your eyes very quickly and just imagine how do you want to spend your day tomorrow, how you want to spend the next month, how you want to spend the entire year. And again, remember that it's not about having full certainty of all of the action steps. In fact, as Maritza said, this actually gets you here because you get so caught up in the how. And on the other hand, when you know with this unshakable certainty how you want to feel, you want to feel a fulfillment, you want to feel joy, you want to challenge yourself, your assumptions, starting different hobbies, starting yoga, dance, whatever you want to start, just to challenge your neural pathways, if you wish, to challenge your assumptions. And speaking of challenging your assumptions, we both have challenged our ways of being culturally, moving to a completely different way of living and communicating even. And I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on different cultural aspects. I'm really curious if we both work with international clients. I'm really curious if you see a common difference between the way Anglo-Saxon cultures experience purpose and the need for purpose, that's important, versus how more collectivistic societies that value relationships, they value time away from work more, how do these collectivistic societies experience purpose? And the last question here, I know it's a handful, however, it is, there are many layers to it. And the one thing that I'm the most curious about is, do you, as I wonder this, that's why I'm asking you, I'm curious. Do you ever wonder if in Anglo-Saxon cultures we talk about purpose so much because there is a demand, it's not integrated in our lifestyle? Whereas in collectivistic societies, I find that people don't necessarily talk about it that much because it is more present. It's more integrated in the way they live their lives.
I haven't found a difference, to be very honest. And if you look, for example, we call it purpose. Japanese call it ikigai. So there is always a search on what's my legacy and why I do what I do. I think the way in which we fulfill it is different. And maybe in other cultures, compared to the Anglo-Saxon cultures, we are more perceptive of the nonverbal. Like there is a concept called a high context and a low context culture. For example, the US, it's a low context culture, meaning that whatever is not coming through what you're saying, there is not so much resonance on saying. So I can say, are you happy? Yes, I am. So, and that is like a lot of what like Asian cultures do. And then high context cultures is like you're hearing the words, but you're paying more attention to the nonverbals. So that is the difference. So for example, if you come from a high context culture, I do come from one of them. I need to be like, if I want to be in the US, I want to really learn to express verbally what do I mean, what do I need, because it's going to be lost in translation. And it's for the person that enters that new environment, is my responsibility to find a voice that could be heard. So I think that we become multilingual. So I don't see that there is an advantage or disadvantage. It's not good or it's not bad. It's just simply different. And for me to have been able to find my voice here, it had actually strengthened me, because sometimes I could talk a lot and I could be all over the place. I have become more surgical, like an arrow to a target. And now I can do things faster, and I can actually summarize and focus things much more, because that is a characteristic of learning how to speak and being more succinct, and less is more. So I think that I can speak both languages today, and you just become more proficient. So I don't think that there is good or bad. It's just different. And it's like, are you aware enough to be able to adjust and to communicate to different types of people and different needs? So I would like to focus that more. And one thing is 100% guaranteed. Everybody would love to know their purpose, because the minute that you know the purpose, there is a light at the back of the eye that just lights up that I cannot even describe. Every person I work with, sometimes they come like defeated, and the minute that they see it, it's like a light that just comes inside of them. And then I give them homework, because after we do the exercise that we do I just say, you have homework. I want you to do market research, because you see it, but you're not going to believe it. And if you just leave it like that, you're going to forget, because it's something that you're not used to it. So say like, go and ask 5 people. If they describe you, how would they describe you? And if you have helped them, how have you helped them? Because I want them to hear the words, and I want them to hear if what they come up with, the purpose statement, actually matches what the other people are saying to them. Every time they come out like, oh my gosh, they say this and they say that. I say like, and I'm like, and does it match? Yes. And one little secret too. Usually we talk our purpose by doing things for other people. What I have also discovered through the different, I have been doing this for a while already, is purpose, when you're doing things for other people, is the deepest desire that we have for ourselves. So if you think about it, you are trying to do that life lesson, and you're trying to do that for yourself by doing this for others. So it's a beautiful dance of like, I do for others because that's how I'm doing also my life lesson. And I have been testing that with every person that I work my purpose with them. And so far, 100% match.
And that's the congruence you talked about in the beginning, how purpose is truly our x-ray, and it's our barometer. It truly shows us, are we in alignment or not? Because when you are in alignment, things start to feel easy. Your interactions feel easy. You go through life with energy. Invitations come to you. It really gets you in this vortex of higher energy, right? So when we are out of alignment, out of congruency with our purpose, it's this vicious cycle, the rat race, or imbalanced bicycle, as you said earlier. Whereas when you are in alignment with your inner GPS, your purpose, or for some of us, our spiritual power, then you are in this vortex, because you're constantly open, you're constantly regenerating yourself. And speaking of this, vortex of high energy and enthusiasm and passion. Maritza, where is your purpose leading you next? What's on the horizon for you?
Um, you know, I want to share what is my purpose. My purpose is to help leaders become more self-aware so that they can become the best version of themselves personally and professionally.
Mm-hmm.
And all this is so they can live a fulfilled life and have extraordinary results all around, including their business.
Mm-hmm.
So where is this taking me is, how can I expand this mission? How can I help people awaken and not be scared of doing that journey inside of us? Because we are so trained to do external things that coming, I call it to life university, sometimes is not so intuitive. We are always learning things from others. So if I want to give you this analogy, we all came to life university. So if you think about everything that you have gone through are the different subjects that we learn. But there is, like, what's the career that you came for? Or what is the end goal? That is actually your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like if you start thinking about all the things that you're doing, but you start paying attention of what are the patterns and what are the trends of the things that you like the most, you can start understanding that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's looking for that thread that actually is putting together all those things that you enjoy, that you like, and that you thrive with.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I answered your question. So if I didn't, please let me know.
Oh, you definitely did. And it's so interesting that you use the word self awareness because as you were describing your interactions with your clients and the assignment you give them their homework, and I was intuitively, I was speaking that energy of self awareness. Learning to know yourself and whether we call it self actualization, self mastery, self awareness, emotional intelligence, it doesn't matter how you want to call it. It's truly giving yourself that intimacy with yourself to really get to know yourself. And to summarize this podcast, ultimately it all boils down to knowing exactly who you are, what were you meant for, and what is your why. And
Exactly.
once you
Exactly. And if you, the more and more, like think about like going to the gym. The more and more you exercise the muscle of defining your what and why,
Mhm,
the closer you get to your mission. And
absolutely.
because you're exercising that muscle, the muscle we have exercised the most, how? How? Most of us are experts at that. But remember, how is steps, not necessarily with a full direction. Now, if you have a clear what and why, the how comes through. So just test yourself.
Mhm,
Are the what and why driving your actions? Or is a bunch of hows the main goals or the end goals?
mhm. Absolutely. And speaking of having that clear perspective and the self-awareness and the horizon, intuitively what I pick from you, and because I also know you and I see what you're doing, I could tell that you are very very in sync with whatever life leads you, and at the same time you are both very flexible and you still have the things that you're doing, and this is also how you create this balance, right? When you have a purpose, it's not about uh, quitting your job and traveling the world unless this is what your soul is telling you to do. You can integrate your purpose in whatever domain that fits you. If you have a family, if you have a full-time job, if you are a vice president, if you're an entrepreneur, if you are everyone, it is all about finding that internal drive that gives you the internal motivation, the
Mm-hmm.
lasting motivation to create something that is bigger than yourself. And to summarize again, going back to what you said, which is so true, that very often what we naturally do for others or what we strive to do for others, it's something that we either want to do for ourselves or we are already doing it for ourselves, because as Ziegler said, if you help people get what they want, you get what you want, right? So purpose is about having that altruism and the ripple effect and giving back. And I think that's also an antidote to the culture of what's in it for me, what can I get from this, how what can I earn from this, what is the promotion I can get, is give me, give me, give me. Whereas purpose is the balancer. Purpose is about what can I give, what can I provide, what can I learn, right? And as a summary, as we are concluding this fantastic podcast, time just flies when you talk about purpose. If Maritza, I'm curious, if you could now travel back in time to Maritza, who just came to America, and she was going through her initial challenges that propelled us forward, is there anything you want to tell that younger version of yourself, or would you just let her figure it out on her own?
Everything I have lived have brought me to this path. But if I was younger Maritza, I would say, hey, find people that already are living the things that you want. The problem that I had for myself is like, because I was so into the people pleasing mode, I really lost my ability to say truly what I want without being influenced by other circumstances or other people. So if I will, for my kids or for myself, I say, exercise the power of dreaming and truly saying what you want without fear of being judged or failing. Just really have that ability to dream through what and why. Because if we do that, we have, and you see the people that are super successful, it's just they're like, no, this is my dream, I'm just going to go do that. And usually that dream is an alignment to their purpose and their mission. So if there is something that I would tell myself, is like, stop listening to all these expectations of people and really give yourself that time. Put your hands on your heart and say truly what you want. And don't let anybody crush that want, even if they laugh at you, even if they think they're crazy or you live in a utopia. It's your dream, just hold it. And sometimes we tend to talk too much. If it's something important to you, keep it to yourself. Keep it to yourself, work at it, imagine it exactly with that emotion, with that conviction, because that is going to be an igniter to be true to yourself, to be aligned with what you want. And that's how you can be the best version of yourself. Because there is one thing that is guaranteed. Every one of us came with a unique gift to this world, and that world is waiting for it. But it's waiting for us to let it come out. So when we just keep covering with other expectations and just be so worried about the how, we just keep putting dirt, and then we just keep like, we lose visibility. So if that would be the advice that I give, and you ask me, so what is next for Maritza? It's just helping people navigate this process and become clearer on what's their purpose, what is the life that they want for themselves. So day in and day out, I just want to help leaders and people that want to be working with this. So I do it in my company and I do it outside my company. And my dream is to have a team where we all can go into companies or into different organizations, and we can accelerate that process so we all can be more aligned to our purpose and live a fulfilled life. That is what's next for Maritza.
This is so exciting, and the impact that you're creating is already so valuable, and it is going to continue having more and more momentum, because ultimately, even if we have one person, they're helping everyone in their lives. So this in itself is so fulfilling, knowing that your life matters. If you
Yes.
are in, and with that, And because we can talk about purpose for a long time, we're going to conclude here. And if you were inspired by this podcast, let us know in the comments. Make sure to give us a like and check out what Maritza is doing. She shares valuable information every day on her social media and also on her website. They're going to be linked in the description. I am Ana Maria, the founder of Voda Coaching and also principal coach of Total Freedom Life, where we help high performance live with total freedom. Thank you so much for joining us today. Remember, you are legendary. You were meant for something bigger, and I can't wait to see you fulfill your purpose. Bye.
Bye bye.